Hello, hello. Let me click on my other phone here. Everyone. Yay. We're getting better at this, I hope. It's hard work learning how to do all this stuff. What's up, guys? What's up? It's a rainy week this week in British Columbia. I don't know where you guys are listening in from, watching, but it's kind of doldrum here today. And this week we're getting wind and rain and, fall's here, right? So today we are discussing a very difficult topic. It's been funeral week here at Your Backup Plan, and my name is Tino Alexa. And I'm here with Your Backup Plan because one thing that we can all count on in life, that we're going to die, possibly get sick, even injured, or lose everything in a disaster. And you know what that's like, because we have experienced some of that already in British Columbia, California right now. I send out lots of love and prayers to all the firemen, all the firefighters, because California is getting their share of fires this winter, fall. And we have enough. We have enough in the world with COVID. We don't need any extra stuff. So sending light and love to all those who are fighting the fires in all the different areas. I am with Your Backup Plan. I created Your Backup Plan. It's an app. You can find it on Google Play and iTunes. I'm a best-selling author. I'm a best-selling author, a financial expert, an app developer, and an emergency preparedness coach in the industry. So I am here to help everybody get better prepared for the unexpected. And today we are going to discuss our funeral week. We had a tour on Tuesday of a funeral home and a cemetery. If you haven't caught that, the link is down below. We also had a podcast, and that link is down below as well. For our podcast show this week was on our funeral week, was saving funeral expenses. Do you think we could do that? Can we? Has anyone ever done that? Comment down below if you have, because it's a difficult thing to do. You kind of have to know the ins and outs of what to do and how to do it. But if you want to comment down below, if you're watching this, please feel free to do so, ask a question. We are here to help you. If you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do so. It's under Your Backup Plan. I will have live videos every week, as well as a link to all the other extras that you might get. So feel free to subscribe and like and share. Share with your loved ones, share with your friends and family if you think it would help you out at all. I wanted to talk about how we could save on funeral expenses. And we had a tour, as I discussed. We looked at burial plots if you want to be buried, and in our blog we also talked about the expenses surrounding that, because you have to check in your own funeral home what kinds of products that they have first, and rules and regulations around burials, because some cemeteries require a container to put you into, and some don't. So some have rules and regulations around the tombstone, around the headstones, or the markers, memorials is what we call them. And sometimes there's rules and regulations around that. So you should definitely check with wherever you're going to be what their regulations are. We saw a crematorium where you get cremated. We talked about that, and we talked about cremation and the choices and options around, picking out an urn that you can travel with, an urn that you can scatter the remains in. We discussed ones for your mantle, ones that you can share with different family members. There's ornaments that you can have made. There are glass blown with the ashes that you can have done. You can purchase jewelry with either ashes in them or a photograph of the person. So those are all kind of different options that you get bombarded with at the worst time of your life when you're having to figure things out. So it's kind of nice to kind of look at what options there are ahead of time and make a few decisions around that, especially with your family. Having a family meeting is super, super important because you want to know, perhaps it's your parents, they're getting older. You want to kind of get a head start on what kinds of things that they've thought about, what they would like to have. Perhaps having a family meeting and discussing their wishes as well as what they would like, whether you want to be buried or cremated and all of those types of things. And we will hold a workshop on how to have a family meeting and the questions that you should ask around that family meeting so that you're better prepared for the other person as well. And then we talked about yourself, all the different options and products and services there are around that and what you think that you might want. So we talked about being prepared ahead of time by having a plan, writing it down, putting it in your app perhaps, looking at putting it in the app and getting organized with all the different questions that it asks you. It's very easy, intuitive to follow, easy as 1, 2, 3, basically. But also, if you wrote these notes down, you need to know what kinds of questions to ask and what kind of answers you're looking for, what you might need at the time of going into a funeral home and then having the questions asked to you. So those are all the kinds of things. There's probably 1,000 questions, literally. There's just so many questions and so much information that you need to know about the person, about their history. So just giving you a heads up on that one, and we'll definitely be having a workshop around that for you. So being prepared, having it written down somewhere, looking at maybe if you're not sure how to do that, having a workshop, looking into our workshops that we will be having in the month of October. We're going to have a video day where we're just going to do a whole bunch of workshops for you, and they're all going to be about 20 minutes long. So if you're into that, please subscribe so that you get notified. So there really is only 3 options around funeral expenses. Option 1 is pre-planning. So having to go into a funeral home of your choice, and they will ask you what kinds of things that you want, some of those decisions, as we called them, that I gave you at the beginning. Some of those options and decisions that you would make, you're going to make them in front of an advisor. And it's a great way to, talk about it with someone who's very knowledgeable. It's also good to bring someone with you where you're going to make those decisions with. Also, it's also good to ask those questions with someone as well as find out what options that they have. Maybe a different location or maybe a different home might have different people, so they'll have different people that you might like. You might get a good vibe from it. it's very personal, and it's about relationship building with someone that you can care, like, and trust about your planning. And so it's also good to kind of go in and get a feel for that kind of thing. If you feel that they're being sincere, if you feel that they're being helpful, then those are kind of things to think about and talk to them about. So pre-planning you can do by them sitting with you. They can even come to your home or another location if you wish. But it's all about getting asked the questions and you making those decisions. And so those are your wishes. And that's really, really important, that if you don't pre-plan, you need to have those wishes somewhere. You need to have that discussion with someone that you like, care, and trust, whether it's a family member or a friend, but someone needs to know what it is that you want. Do you want to have happen, and what do you want that picture to look like after? So those are big, big questions that you really need to give it some thought about. So let's do pros and cons to dealing with pre-planning. Some of the pros would be that you're getting your wishes and asked all those questions that you really need to do. Some of the pros would be that not only are you getting your wishes talked about and discussed, but you are also getting it out and having a plan, having it planned out for you. Another pro is that you get today's prices at that funeral home. So not in 10 years, not when you pass away, not in 50 years, not in 30 years of whatever those prices look like, but you're getting today's prices. And that's really important because you could save a lot of money by doing it that way. And the other pro with pre-planning is that you can have a payment plan done on those expenses. Say it costs $5,000. You can have it set up so that you do that $5,000 bill over a year, or you can have it so it's over 15 years or over 20 years. But then it's done. And if you don't make or complete your final payment in that length of time of frame, that it's covered. The cost of the plan, of the contract that you signed, is covered. So that's a great option as well, because that's looking at the price it is today versus whenever, and also that it's looked after for you. I think the con for pre-planning that I can think of is that let's say you've gone into a funeral home, you've written a contract, you've started a payment plan, or you just bought it outright. The problem around that is that if you haven't got it written somewhere, or that it's somewhere to be found, or that you've told someone, or that you haven't put it in your backup plan app, that your family and friends don't know. And they don't know are they going to call around the local area? Are they going to phone around the whole state or province or what have you, and wherever country you're in? How many phone calls do they have to make to find out if you've made a plan, if you have some pre-planning done in a contract purchase, not talked about, not said, oh, I think I might do this, or, you know, I'm going to do this. No. Something that you've actually done, something that you've written a contract for, something that you've purchased. And that's when it's really important to then put it in your backup plan app so that family and friends know that it's done and it's all together. The problem around putting it in a safety deposit box, the contract, the problem being is the family can't always get into the safety, asking yourself all of those questions. and buying an insurance policy to cover that expense. So if you did all your questions and you answered everything, and it came out to looking like that everything was going to cost $5,000 for everything that you wanted, well, you could buy an insurance policy to cover 5, or you could buy insurance cover to cover 20,000 or 25, or whatever the small amount would be, which is an option. Or you could have an investment that's you've put into a certain spot, and that investment is going to cover the expenses for you at that time. But the beneficiary would have to be the person who's going to make these arrangements, because they need to be able to make a claim on your insurance policy or make a claim in your investment with death certificates, and not just a copy either. They all need witnessed, notarized death certificates. So that can take a few days as well. So it's definitely something to consider. You could buy it outright. You could make your own plan yourself, put away the investment for it. You could buy an insurance policy to cover it. But what isn't covered in that picture, if we're going to have pros and cons, the con that I can think of doing it that way is that you haven't really looked at all your wishes. You haven't listed or written down what your wishes are. So that's super, super important, because if you've only asked, well, I want to be cremated, I don't want to be buried, and I want to be I just want to be scattered in the ocean, and I want to, I don't want a service or anything. I just want a celebration of life, and that might cost, I don't know, $2,000 somewhere that you guys want to have it. Those are the small, little, tiny, major wishes of what you want for funeral stuff. But that's definitely not all the questions that you're going to get asked, or that your family is going to get asked at that time. So we really need to cover all those questions so that whoever is going to be looking after your stuff is going to have an idea of what it is that you would have answered to those questions, if that makes sense. So the other con, of course, is that you don't have all the questions answered, and you don't have your wishes all put down. You only have a bare minimum, and that you have it written down somewhere possibly, but does the family or friends know where it is? And have you answered all the questions? So that to me would be a con against saving money on the funeral expense, because you're going to pay the rate of the funeral expense at the time of the funeral. You're not going to pre-buy it, and you're not going to get any discounts for at-need funeral. It's at need, which means it's needed immediately. There's no discounts available for that. So I guess that could be a con, because you're going against saving money for the same expense that you're going to need, and that your wishes and your decisions on all of these things haven't actually been met. So you haven't actually answered all of those things that are needed. So I think that would be probably a difficult moment of planning, because you've only done part of it. You've either found an investment that you could put aside for the family to use, or you bought an insurance policy to cover it. But there's this huge gap of answering all the questions and making decisions and having your own wishes that no one else knows. So that to me would be against that saving money on your funeral, because those are big things. And if you used over here your backup plan app, you would have all that information in there. So you've had all your questions answered, you've looked at all the options, you've made decisions, and you've listed all your wishes down to, I want an outside barbecue having this and this and this and that playing as music, and all of those big questions that no one knows the answers to at the time. So those are good things to talk about, and those will be asked to you in your app right there. So the third option for saving on funeral expenses is when it actually happens. When it actually happens does not give you any discount. You pay the rate of the expense at the time of death, basically. So there are no discounts, there's no vouchers, there's no savings because you're a certain age, there's no senior discount, there's no anything. So that right there, that's not a saving, that would be a con, not a pro. I couldn't find any pros for let it happen and look after it then. I couldn't find anything. There's like no savings to that at all. It's going to be more expensive at the time of having a death. You're going to pay more. You're not saving anything. You need to pay the whole cost immediately up front before anything happens. You don't have any payment plans, nothing. You don't have your wishes. The family and friends might have heard you say something at one time. Maybe, in making dinner one night, you're making dinner together and your mom says, hey, I really don't want to be buried. I'd like to be cremated. But that's all that was said. I mean, that's only one little question of making your funeral arrangements. So that's not good enough, and it's not going to answer, it's not going to help you in the long run. So that to me is not a pro, and that there's no discounts. So to me, they're all cons for let it happen and I'll pay for it at the time of need. There's no savings with that at all. So the only options are 1 and 2. And let's do a review again for anybody that's just come on our live broadcast. My name is Tina Alexa. I'm with your backup plan. We created an app on Google Play and iTunes that you can download and use to put everything of your life into one place so that your family or friends or your guest, I call it a guest user, has access to it when it's needed. It might not be on a death, it might be of just being in the hospital sick with a ventilator, and your family doesn't know where to pay your mortgage or where to pay your rent or where your key is or how to feed the dog, all of these different questions. So anyways, going back to our funeral week that we were in our discussion about, is we talked about burials and cremations and what a crematorium looked like, having a family meeting for this discussion, being prepared yourself with the same discussions as if you discuss this with your relative or your partner or your parents. We talked about saving on funeral expenses, and we looked at 3 options. The first option being that you've pre-planned and that you've paid for it, whether it's all one lump sum or that you have a pre-planning payment option over, say, 15 years. Those are options that you've made decisions about things and that you have today's prices on that same plan that you pick out, and that you have a payment option for it, that you don't have to pay for it all up front, but you definitely can if you wish. And that there are discounts available for pre-planning that you normally wouldn't get any other time. The only con that, in summary, that we found with pre-planning is that your wishes are covered. They're in that pre-planning contract of what things that you want and what you've paid for. But does your family know where that is? Where is that contract? And are they going to phone around to Timbuktu to find out if you did, because you might have mentioned it? Oh, I'm going to, this week I have an appointment to get my planning done, but you never did it. But your relatives think that you did. So we need to have a spot where we can put this. And like I said, a safety deposit box is also not the option, but it would be if you had our app, because then you would put in the app where it is, and then they would have a better idea of where it is and what the location is that you've chosen. Your wishes are all going to be in that, as well as what you want music to play, and perhaps you want to have a cremation and you want to be scattered somewhere in particular. So those are all kinds of things that would be in that pre-planning that you could have a family meeting about and talk about it and get the pre-planning done and booked and paid for. But the con against that is that your family isn't aware of that. So option 2 would be that you make your own decisions, you make your own plan, but you use one or both, or one or the other, an insurance policy or an investment to pay for it. But you have to make sure who the beneficiary is for that, because if you put your sister on your insurance policy to pay for the funeral expenses, but the beneficiary is actually on the insurance policy is your husband or boyfriend or brother, then that's not going to help the person who gets the insurance policy proceeds and having to pay for the funeral. So we always have to make sure if the insurance policy is there for a reason, then it needs to also have a reason that it goes hand in hand with that. An investment is the same. An investment in every country has a beneficiary, and you need to ensure that the beneficiary is on that plan. And the only problem I see with this is that the investment or insurance policy doesn't have the correct beneficiary on it at some point in time. It could be years down the line and you forgot to change it, or that your wishes and your decisions that you've made about your funeral planning hasn't been written down, or that it's been written down but the family doesn't know where it is. So those are all kind of things to also think about, because that could cause a real problem as well. The investment goes to somebody else and somebody else has to pay the funeral expenses, and that would cause chaos in your family. So we also looked at time of need, when it actually happens. Is that an option? And yes, that would be an option, but you will need to pay the whole cost of it up front within a day or two of the person passing. So that money you need to be able to have access to that money, which some people do not have that kind of money in their bank account. And for the person who passed away, unless there is someone on that bank account, you do not have access to that bank account in that short period of frame of time. So someone else would have to be able to buy that and use that money up front to be able to access it. Otherwise, it's not going to work, because you wouldn't be able to have access to that money that quickly, and you will have to pay for it, and then you wouldn't necessarily know what their wishes are, what that looks like, what they wanted to have happen. So in a nutshell, with those 3 options, if you guys have any questions about funeral planning, if you want to subscribe to our YouTube channel, we will be having workshops on our YouTube channel. And one of them will definitely be about planning a funeral, the questions, decisions you have to need to make. There'll be another workshop on family meetings, having that conversation with your parents, having that conversation with your sister or brothers, and how to do that. So yeah, there's going to be lots and lots of workshops that you would want to not miss, definitely, because we can only go into so much depth in our live videos, but definitely in the workshops we get down to you actually doing the work. Doing all that work, and it's really only questions, so it's not work at all, right? But thank you so much for coming out to our funeral week this week. It was a little bit difficult because of, it's a tough topic to talk about. And it really doesn't have to be, because once you make those choices, once you make those decisions, you don't really need to go back and look at them again. So I want to make sure that you subscribe to our podcast. It's on 7 different platforms. We did have a funeral week this week on our podcast on Spotify, iTunes is just 2 of them. So whatever, you guys want to listen to. But every week you'll find a different topic that we're going to be discussing. I hope it will inspire and motivate you guys to start thinking about your own unique plan, about, putting it together, and some decisions that you need to make around that. And not only does your backup plan app help you with that process, but there's also, it provides you notifications. So next year, when your car insurance comes up for renewal, it will notify you a month before saying, your car insurance up for renewal. Do you want a quote, or do you want to make that purchase now? So I think, not only is it something that you put your stuff into over time, but it's also going to be available to you when you need it the most. And it's also going to give you notifications and reminders about updating things, and maybe reviewing something, maybe getting a quote for something. So take a moment and subscribe to our channel, and click on the bell to get notifications so that you get notified when we have a new video uploaded. And if you have any questions or comments about anything that you've gone through, please, comment down below. I will make sure I answer every single one of them. And I just want you guys to make sure that, that you have love to send to your family members, because you're planned. You have a plan. You wanted to make sure that it was as easy as you could make it for that person that's left behind. And I think that's the important part. I think family matters. And if we can make it a little bit easier for those that are left behind, why not? Why not? It only makes sense. Because those options that you make for all of those different questions in life can be easy. It doesn't have to be difficult. So I'd like to close it off for tonight. Take care of everyone. Take care of yourself. Stay safe. Wash your hands. Wear a mask. Because we're still in for some more scares. Our second time around for this winter will be coming, I'm sure. So I send lots of love and light to everyone at your backup plan. Please take a look at our podcast, subscribe to our channel on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram. And I'd like to send everyone a good night, and I'll see you next week. Bye for now.